The story begins in the year 594 of the Holy Calendar at the Arcanist Academy. The MC, standing before this enormous academy, finds it incredible how large it is, and is also impressed by the number of candidates. At that moment, someone calls out to him. It is his parents, complaining that he is moving too fast. His mother approaches, worried about the color of his hair, since no one can notice it, and he asks her not to worry, as he has already solved that problem. Even so, she remains uneasy, believing that it might not be a good idea for him to proceed, since she has heard that many candidates have died, and, to make matters worse, his hair and eye color could make him a target. Julian asks her not to worry, since magic is the only way to solve the boy's problems, and besides, in the Northern Empire, that is the only academy where commoners can take the exam. After all, it is the Arcanist Academy of Candria. It is the main institution founded by the royal family, a training school for Arcanists, where the strongest great masters of the Empire teach. In the last 10 years, several guardians of non-noble origin have emerged, and most of them graduated from that academy. After saying this, he concludes that it is the perfect environment for a child to learn magic. Lewis agrees, as he needs to become a Grand Master, and assures that he will grow stronger to obtain ownership of the church orphanage. His mother is surprised to hear these words, and says that he has definitely become reliable, since besides being unable to cure her fever, he still ends up worrying her. The MC asks her not to worry about that, since thanks to her, he is alive. In fact, he thinks this way because, in his past life, he had a serious illness and could not live without a respirator, and his parents hated him for being a financial burden. Even so, he never gave up on his passion for martial arts, and that passion bore fruit, as his doctoral thesis was about it, and he managed to become an academic researching martial arts theory. His thesis contributed greatly to the development of the industry, but a certain academic stole his thesis and accused him of being a thief. In the end, even his parents abandoned him, and all he wished for was that, in his next life, he would have a healthy body and a family that loved him. After all this, in the year 90 of the Holy Calendar, in northern Candria, Laciella looked at the baby while her husband asked whether she would really take in the child, since the color of his hair and eyes was a problem. The MC, seeing the woman, wondered where he was, since as far as he knew, he had died. She answers her husband that the child is innocent and cannot simply be abandoned, and so she gave him the name Louis Kiril. With this outcome, he gained a precious family and a healthy body. After all these memories, someone pushes Laciella, who falls hard to the ground. Those responsible say that this is no place for commoners, since dreaming of an academic education is impossible. The MC becomes extremely furious at this, and the boys even mock them, saying that they ended up touching a commoner and that this will bring bad luck. Lewis's fury grows more and more, but his father grabs his arm and asks him to focus on the exams. His mother says the same, since he had promised not to cause trouble at school. He apologizes, and the boys leave, calling the family trash. Next, all the candidates ask for a path to be cleared, as Lord Cain is passing through. This is Cain, heir of the Aranka family. The MC thinks about all the noble boys and only grows more irritated, as he cannot stand arrogant people. His mother sees that he is lost in thought, but the boy apologizes and assures that he will pass and become a Grand Master. These words catch Cain's attention, as well as that of the other nobles. Louis heads toward the academy, vowing to become stronger and also protect what is precious to him. His parents ask whether the boy will really be fine, since there are 20,000 candidates and only 20 to 30 will be approved. He admits that their son is more stubborn than anyone else, but when he decides to do something, he will move forward without caring about what others think. After the MC arrives at the location, he realizes that everyone is older than him. Suddenly, someone appears flying, announcing that the academy admission will begin. This is Aurorian Smith, the academy director. Everyone is surprised, since the man is a Grand Master and will personally administer the test. Meanwhile, the MC thinks about the levels of martial artists in that world, starting with apprentice, fighter, master, grandmaster, sage, and lastly, saint. Lewis knows that a grandmaster is the third from the top and is a privileged class in the world. The director explains that the first test is to climb the stairs guarded by veterans, and the first passes of the exam are obtained through them. Basically, there are 1,000 in total, and only those who obtain one will be able to participate in the next test. He finishes by saying that when the passes run out, the exam ends, and orders everyone to begin. Immediately, the children start running, thinking the test will be far too easy, but the test instructor welcomes everyone and, with his devastating aura, guarantees that they will all come to know hell. The pressure is so strong that no one can continue climbing, and they are thrown to the ground and disqualified. Other candidates ask if that was an attack, but the MC starts walking and says that it was merely a killing intent and not an attack, since he released his aura to intimidate the candidates. In other words, he says that anyone with a weak will would faint from fear. Sheath confirms this and warns that there are many talented people and that there is no place for commoners. The MC stares back, and the irritated boy releases even more power, guaranteeing that the MC will kneel before him. This power makes everyone feel suffocated, to the point where they think they are going to die. Lewis observes all of this and asks if that is all he can do with the aura he possesses. This makes him reflect that he trained extensively, facing various monsters every day, and in front of him, he sees the boy as if he were a goblin. He smiles, knowing that something like that will not work, and advances up the entire staircase, heading straight against the devastating aura before him, since all he wants is to show the nobles what true killing intent is. He advances with all the power he has, to the point of frightening the other candidates, as well as Sheath, who is startled when he sees the MC's fist in front of him, stopping just centimeters from his face. The candidates cannot understand how Lewis faced that devastating aura and still managed to throw a punch at a veteran. The MC continues walking and goes to the board to take his pass. However, Sheath turns around furiously and moves to attack, but Lewis notices and counterattacks, with the two of them colliding fists. The veteran cannot believe how a commoner blocked his strike without magic. At that moment, the director appears and announces that the MC passed the first test. Sheath comments that the boy is just a commoner, but Aurorian makes it clear that the Academy treats everyone equally, since they are all humans in the face of monsters. The boy apologizes, acknowledging that the director is right. Next, the director goes to Louis to congratulate him. In addition, he says that the color of his hair is quite concerning. Those words freeze the MC's heart, but even so, confident, he asks what he means. However, the director places a hand on his shoulder and says that if he is approved, he will prepare a special magic potion to hide the unique characteristics that he has. Lewis is not sure what Aurorian is planning, but he only says that he will prepare for the second test. After that, he walks away, passing by the veteran, who is completely furious, since this is the first time the director has intervened during the exam, especially to defend a commoner. After that, they go to the location of the second exam, and the MC observes that out of 20,000 candidates, only 1,000 remain, and most of them are elite nobles. Once again, the troublemakers bump into Lewis, and one of them even says that next time, no one will help him. His accomplice reinforces that if it were not for the director, he would have been disqualified. The MC sighs and calls him a complete idiot, since the Grand Master has better judgment than they do. Max takes the bait and asks if he wants to be knocked out. Louis just keeps smiling, and this makes the boy even more furious, to the point of launching an attack. However, the MC uses only 2 fingers and strikes the boy's body, which simply can no longer move, and he explains that it is a meridian rupture and applies even more force to the attack, to the point of sending the noble flying across the hall. This draws the attention of the other candidates, while the noble tries to recover, but he is in shock since he cannot feel his arm, and this makes him even more furious, as he believes he was poisoned and therefore will file a complaint immediately. However, Lewis approaches and says that it is not poison, since he only used martial arts and held back earlier, and therefore says that the only people who can hit others are those prepared to be hit as well. At this moment, someone grabs his arm. It was Cain, asking him to calm down, since they are in the middle of an exam, and asking if he really wants to risk being disqualified for nothing. Lewis does not like this lecture, but still leaves, while the troublesome nobles call the MC a filthy commoner. However, Cain intervenes and asks if they know who he himself is, since if they do, they should stay away. Immediately, the 3 panic and leave before causing more trouble, but Max promises that he will not let this go. Lewis only observes, since all nobles are the same, using their status to do whatever they want. Meanwhile, Cain goes toward him and says that he found the boy strong and brave, so, smiling, he asks them to form a team together. At this moment, some girls appear excited to see a lord in the place and ask if he happens to be looking for teammates. To make things worse, more people continue trying to join his team. Other candidates whisper whether Lord Cain is only 13 years old, and even so, is incredible. The MC thinks all of this is a pain. At this moment, a vortex appears in the arena, and from within it, the director emerges, congratulating everyone for reaching the second test, and informing them that it will now be related to power. The candidates find it strange that a mark appears on their bodies, and Cain speculates that it is the mark of the Earth attribute, only then getting startled as his body suddenly becomes heavy. Aronian announces that the second exam will be under the influence of Earth magic and that the fight will take place on the stage. The candidates do not understand how the hell their bodies are so heavy and point forward, since they are seeing a candidate walking normally, meaning he did not receive the magic on his body. At first, Cain does not understand what is going on until he looks to the side in shock, since someone is walking normally even with the heavy body. It was the MC walking toward the director. Aronian once again congratulates him for finishing in first place, and people cannot believe how someone managed to walk normally under such intense pressure on the body. Cain does not hide his surprise, since he received master-level training for 3 years, and, even so, is having difficulty standing. The director announces that the candidates who remain standing will be able to participate in the next test. He uses his magic toward the weapons and throws one of the swords into Louis's hand. All the other candidates also pick up a sword, but they have great difficulty because of the weight. The director asks everyone to get ready and snaps his fingers, releasing the restraints. After doing this, he disappears. The candidates, intrigued, wonder whether they had been restrained by slimes, since they did not even notice it. At that moment, the MC feels something above and realizes that several slimes are falling. The kids are left in doubt as to whether the slimes were the ones that kept them bound to the ground. The director announces that blocking a slime's attack will give 1 point, dodging will give 2 points, and defeating it will give 5 points. In addition, the ranking is determined by the points earned, and the top 100 will advance to the third test. The MC realizes that the number of those passing is decreasing more and more, and the slimes begin to play around in the arena. People ask if this is serious, since the monsters are very weak, and one of them decides to finish it quickly, earning 5 points, and charges forward with everything. However, the monster changes shape and launches an attack at high speed, giving the boy a fright, since, in the blink of an eye, it hits him square in the face. Moreover, it starts heading toward the other students, striking them one by one. Chaos breaks out in the arena, and the teachers remain evaluating from the stands, since they need to record the accumulated points of each participant. The female teacher comments that this year, many important houses are participating and believes that a new record will be set. The Four Eyes, on the other hand, comments that the MC, who is a commoner, is also interesting. The director agrees, as he believes he will see something interesting from him. Meanwhile, the Four Eyes becomes worried, since for some reason Louis still has not moved in the arena. Even the candidates find this strange, but they believe that the slimes are too fast for the MC to keep up with, and begin to say that this is the limit of a commoner. As they say this, a slime changes direction and rushes straight at him. He dodges without even looking, and the slime crashes with full force toward another player. The blonde boy cannot believe he dodged so easily, but this time several slimes begin to move and all head toward Louis. This leaves the blonde boy excited, since now there is no way to dodge. But the MC simply closes his eyes and remembers a training session he did in the snow. His friends questioned whether they really should throw stones at him, and he asked them not to worry, since he only wants to test something. The boys get ready and start throwing with all their strength. Louis prepares himself and imagines that, in his past life, he formulated a hypothesis that, with extensive training, it would be possible to transmit information rapidly to a part of the brain, which, after calculating the trajectory, could act instantaneously. He activates his calculation and begins to dodge all the stones, leaving his friends completely surprised, to the point of asking how he did that and whether it is a new technique. He explains that he calls it void combat calculation. After this recollection, he is about to be hit by the slimes and begins to focus on the technique that predicts movements. He starts calculating all the monsters heading toward him and realizes that the slimes are linked both in speed and power, and begins to calculate the angle and rebound velocity. By doing this, with a single movement, he calmly dodges all the attacks and, with his sword in hand, makes a single strike that cuts all the slimes at once. Cain watches this in surprise, as do the teachers, who consider whether Louis read the movements of the monsters. Cain cannot take his eyes off him and imagines that he definitely needs to form a team with Louis. At that moment, something catches the MC's attention, as another slime appears heading in his direction. He He prepares to gain another 5 points, but before he can attack, another sword kills the monster. He does not like this at all and asks if they are stealing his points. Cain, who made the kill, says that is basically what happened, and, after finishing off the slime, throws it toward the other candidates and points out that he actually stole from them. So he asks if he would like to steal points together. Louis does not respond, and the boy simply says that he wants to rank well and therefore asks him to show all the power he has. The MC likes this confidence and says he agrees, and that the loser must do everything the winner orders. Cain likes this condition, since no one has ever made such a demand of him. From afar, other candidates watch, and Max thinks this is terrible, since he does not know what they can do now that Louis has joined Cain. However, he sees an opportunity when the slime suddenly changes direction toward Louis, and the noble takes advantage of this to fire his arrows. The MC sees the monster approaching, and with a single attack, cuts it in half. But he is startled when, right behind the monster, 3 arrows are flying straight toward his face until he is hit, startling Cain as he collides with his body. Max celebrates, having managed to hit the target, but the MC laughs, and holding the 3 arrows in his hand, asks if that is all he has. The boys cannot believe that someone can catch an arrow attack with their hand. Cain then asks if he is okay, since he cannot believe that the scum is playing dirty. He tells him not to worry, but Max does not like being called scum, and this time his target changes to Cain, who even activates his double arrow skill. With that, they attack using a possessed arrow. Cain manages to destroy it easily, but the possessed arrow appears, and he is startled because he did not expect it. The MC grabs the arrow with his bare hands before it can hit the boy, who upon seeing this, panics because Louis's hand is bleeding, but he tells him not to worry, since the troublemaker's target is himself. The professors see that the intent of the attack was clearly malicious and question whether they should disqualify him. Aronian replies no, since the boys are already screwed without him needing to do anything, and simply asks to prepare the healing potions. After that, the MC asks Cain if he has ever heard of baseball, and before he can continue, a slime comes at him, and he prepares to attack, making all his calculations, and with all the strength he has, delivers a sword strike as if he were hitting a ball in a baseball game, which is enough to send the slime flying like a cannonball toward the troublesome brats, hitting Max square in the stomach and sending him flying out of the arena, disqualifying him as a result. Cain asks if it is a common game, since it sounded interesting. The boys get angry that their brother was disqualified, but when they look ahead, they notice that Louis has disappeared. That is because he appears above and delivers a powerful kick to the slime, which flies straight into the boy's face, disqualifying yet another retard for leaving the arena. The last one left panics, and the MC appears behind him asking if there is a problem. He backs away and tells a mere plebeian not to get any funny ideas, but he trips over Cain's foot and falls out of the arena. The blonde thanks the MC for catching the arrow in midair and asks if his hand is okay, and he replies that it is, and admits that he found the boy quite decent for a noble. Cain asks him not to lump him in with the other nobles, and asks if he has ever heard of the great families being clans that have produced many great masters and sages. His influence is immense and powerful, rivaling even the royal family, the nobility, and the Arcanist Association. Louis says that there are probably all kinds of nobles. Meanwhile, the other candidates are outraged that a commoner is interfering in the exam, and, irritated, guarantee that they will not allow more points to be taken. The two look to the side and see the boys running in their direction. The candidates pretend that Lord Cain is being attacked by the MC, and everyone runs toward them asking to take down the commoner. The MC asks them to be careful, since it has turned into a street fight, but Cain asks him not to worry, since this time he will not lower his guard. Fay observes that things are getting interesting and advances, calling her friend, since she wants to make the despicable nobles regret it. The MC continues dodging the slimes and realizes that there are too many people getting in the way, and that if he scores more points, things will become problematic. Miliana defeats a candidate, just as Fay sends another one flying. Neil watches all this chaos and gets excited about it, since he likes a mess. He gets ready and charges in, because he prefers hitting people rather than slimes. He activates his spinning hammer and starts striking everyone in front of him without mercy, until he realizes that he has eliminated a bunch of candidates. A professor asks whether they should stop what is happening, and the director replies that they should not, since the youths have a lot of energy to burn. The professor agrees, but asks whether it will not be a problem if all the nobles are disqualified. Aronian asks her not to worry, since that academy has its own rules and does not care about public opinion. In any case, He flies at full speed to the arena and announces that the second test is over. He also reveals that the scores and rankings of the approved candidates will be shown later. Everyone feels relieved since the magical effect of the earth has disappeared from their bodies. The instructors rush to give healing potions to the injured, and Louis is surprised by the potion since it is the first time he has seen one, but he laments it because even a basic magical potion costs 3 silver coins. Cain goes up to him and asks if something is wrong and tells him not to worry, since if he wins, he will not bully the boy. With everything settled, the director activates the scroll and shows everyone's rankings. The candidates grow curious about the rankings, and the director announces that the 5 best candidates surpassed the scores of previous records and declares that 5th place went to Miliana Royce, 4th place goes to Cain, 3rd place goes to Fay Durahhan. Before continuing, Cain is startled since he did not hear his name and believes he was disqualified for attacking the riffraff. The next to be announced was Louis, with 887 points. Cain is shocked by this score and also asks whether he is the so-called commoner people were talking about earlier. The MC says it is a secret, and the boy replies that it is not a problem, and since he won, asks what he wants him to do. Louis answers that he will say it after the test. Next, the director announces who took first place, breaking all unprecedented records. The one responsible was Neil Gunn, with 888 points. The boy gets excited since he found many candidates and asks them not to disappoint him. People cannot believe that both 1st and 2nd place were taken by commoners. Miliana, meanwhile, feels something strange about her friend, and the girl is excited because she has found her perfect opponent. The professor tells the director that commoners taking 1st and 2nd place is unprecedented in the academy, and both are from orphanages. He comments on a curiosity. The Arcanist Association manages orphanages, and that is because true strength has nothing to do with social status. He says this and asks everyone who was approved to proceed to the next location. Cain tells the MC that the boy came very close to 1st place and is curious about which of the two is stronger. After they arrive at the location, the director announces that it will be a survival test and that he will also give out some emblems, in addition to informing that the veterans will use teleportation magic to throw each person into a different point in the forest. He explains that the objective is to collect as many emblems as possible, regardless of the method, and that basically the candidates who lose their emblems will be immediately disqualified, with only the top 10 being admitted. Cain says that apparently the 2 of them will need to separate, but asks him to be careful. The MC says the same, and comments that apparently the board announced the result of the 2nd test to create exactly this situation. Aronian asks everyone to demonstrate their abilities to the fullest, surviving until the end. Louis begins to walk, imagining that he is close to admission and that he will win no matter what happens. At that moment, someone approaches and says that he is in trouble for humiliating the nobles. The MC does not like this at all, since more candidates are approaching, appearing like ants. He understands what is happening, since it is clear that the teleportation team leaked his location. The big guy tells them to stop the small talk and charges forward with everything, but he simply dodges the attack. The other nobles also attack from behind, but he dodges as well, until he feels a strange sensation and defends against an attack that almost hit him. He does not understand what the hell that was, but he has no time to think, since the kids do not give him any peace at all. And once again, that strange blow comes toward him, and he blocks it in surprise, since it is not a common attack. One of the boys prepares himself and tries to strike, asking if he is surprised by the wind of arrows flying at him, since a commoner cannot even use magic. But he gets irritated because he cannot land a single hit. Louis begins to get irritated, since he is not managing to calculate magical trajectories, and decides that it is time to change strategy. He will use the send-no-send counterattack before receiving another attack, which basically uses the enemy's power against them. The noble tells them to lower their heads, and everyone advances at the same time. The MC realizes that it is the perfect moment and also advances. The big guy gets excited and attacks with full force, but Louis simply dodges, places his sword against the axe, and pulls the guy with all his strength, attacking another player with the man's own weapon. One is struck in the chest, and the other has a spear embedded in his eye. The archer high up in the tree takes advantage and shoots once more, but the MC, who is already alert, simply pulls one of the nobles toward him to use as a shield and then discards him like trash. Next, he grabs the spear and throws it with full force, hitting the tree dead center. Then, with his absurd speed, he strikes all the nobles in an instant, defeating them and taking all the emblems. The man becomes extremely furious and orders the archer in the tree to attack with full force using magic. But the boy simply falls from the tree, and Cain appears, saying that it is a pity, since he will no longer be able to use magic. The nobles begin to tremble with fear, not understanding why the hell a lord is in that place. He asks not to be underestimated, since mere nobles are nothing. This drives the boy into total fury, guaranteeing that he will finish off the two of them. But because of his talking, he is hit squarely by the crossbow. The MC says that he is relieved to see Cain well, and the boy replies that it is no problem, since the kids were nothing more than low-level nobles, and he even hands over the emblem of the guy with the arrow. Then, she asks if he needs help, since the nobles kept bothering him. The MC replies that no, since he will solve his own problems. At this moment, Fay appears clapping, since she liked what she heard, and says that he is the boy she had mentioned before. She asks for a fight, and Cain begins to introduce her, saying that she is Fay, the daughter of a Grand Master. However, the MC interrupts by asking if she is his friend and if he has already fought against her. The boy replies that he is not her friend or anything like that, and that, unfortunately, back then, he let his guard down and lost. Fay asks them to stop flirting because she wants to fight. Cain says that she can use magic since she is at the apprentice level, and because of that, he believes it is better to ignore her to collect the emblems. She gets irritated by this, as it gives the impression that he wants to run away from a fight. Louis decides to accept, since he wanted to see how someone from a great family fights. Fay likes hearing that, and says she will fight without magic to be fair, then launches into an attack without wasting time. He gives a simple glance, and the attack lands cleanly. The girl is surprised, since he held the spear as if he had been hit. However, she spins her weapon, which delivers a recoil to his arm, and takes advantage of the opportunity to attack, first horizontally, and then she leaps to use her sacred spear, which strikes the ground directly, completely destroying the area. Two examiners observe from afar, and the four-eyed one says he is surprised by the spear technique of the Durahhan family and expected nothing less from a genius. However, his friend says that the MC, despite being a commoner, is quite impressive as well, but he already knows the outcome, since it is not possible to defeat someone from a great family. He says this and asks the director what he thinks. Aronian says that he likes the MC, but knows that it is not possible to defeat Fay. The examiner is intrigued as to why not, and before he can say anything, something draws his attention to the battle. Amid the smoke, Fay appears once again with her spear technique, and even while attacking at high speed, the MC dodges all of her attacks, and she begins to grow agitated until Louis uses his enhanced vision and notices an opening in her attack. He takes advantage of it to counterattack, but the girl moves very fast and, after adjusting her spear, attacks once again, forcing him to dodge by jumping to the other side of the battlefield. She admits that she cannot believe she did not land a single blow, and he says that it is not that hard to dodge, since you just have to observe carefully. Fay finds this interesting, and at high speed, uses her rising sacred spear and even tells him to try dodging that. The MC analyzes that spear techniques have many movements, and, combined with the weapon's reach, become quite problematic. But even so, he keeps dodging, since he needs to take advantage of the weaknesses of the attack. She attacks once more, and he is already very close, since spears are vulnerable in close combat, so he wants to seize the right moment to instantly reduce the distance, and at that moment, he sees an opening to use his sword dance. She notices what he is trying to do and uses a spinning attack. Louis is surprised by this, and she says that the sacred spear of the Durahhan family has no weakness, and that, while spinning, it even forms a tornado. Such is the speed of the technique. The examiners realize that the girl is remarkable, since even the Grand Master of the Durahhan family learned that technique only at 16 years old, and this makes the girl surpass all the apprentices. The MC does not let himself be intimidated and defends against all the attacks coming his way. He knows that another weakness of the spear technique is its self-consumption of energy, and because of that, an opening will soon appear. Fay grows more tired the more she spins, and Louis notices this opening and advances with everything he has, giving her no chance to react. However, before he can strike, his sword breaks and the piece falls to the ground. This leaves both of them stunned, and she admits that it was incredible, since if the sword had not broken, he would have carried out an excellent counterattack. The MC confirms it and says that, apparently, he has terrible luck. Anyway, she starts pointing out that he had been holding back the whole time, and Lewis apologizes, saying that it is a habit to observe before going all out in a fight. He says this and warns that he will get serious now, but she does not understand since the weapon is broken. He asks her not to worry because in truth, he is better with his fists than with a weapon. She does not waste time since she is facing someone full of openings and once again uses her spear technique, which advances at high speed while he simply prepares himself. Cain shouts that this is Fay's charged attack and that facing it head-on will cause serious injury. He prepares all his movements and calmly uses them toward the spear technique, confronting the blow head-on, and after letting out a shout, he grabs the spear with his hand. This leaves the girl speechless, since something like that is impossible. The instructors do not understand what the MC did to manage to block it, since the spear attack should have had a penetrating effect. Fay, irritated that her attack was blocked, shouts that it is not over yet, kicks her spear into the air, and when she catches it again, tells him to prepare for what is coming next. The MC soon realizes that several clones of the girl appear, moving at high speed and attacking at the same time. He finds this interesting, and once again uses his technique, moving his fists at a colossal speed that blocks all the spear attacks coming toward him, changing their trajectories in all directions. The girl does not understand what is happening, and the director, watching from afar, says that apparently Lewis is stopping the rotation of the spear with a special technique, but admits that he has never seen anything like it, and that it is surprising. After the MC defends all the attacks, he lands a solid blow to her abdomen, sending the girl flying as if she were a potato. She becomes furious at this, but asks what strange technique he used. He replies that it is a type of martial arts defense that combines a spin with the movement of the spear to cancel the rotation. She is confused by this explanation, but Louis simply advances. Since she will not understand anyway, Fay is startled, but decides to attack regardless. The MC dodges, but she spins her spear, since she knew he would do that. Lewis keeps dodging so fast that Cain becomes confused, wondering if he might be seeing an optical illusion. Since the movement he is witnessing is like that of a butterfly, the girl grows increasingly stressed because her target is right in front of her, and yet she cannot hit him. The MC merely reflects that this is an elegant step created by a boxer, moving back and forth like a butterfly. It is a light movement with a rhythm that is hard to follow, and in the blink of an eye, he closes the distance and lands another punch that breaks the girl's spear and sends her flying without any chance to react. Cain cannot believe that Fay was crushed, just like the director, who admits that it was an unexpected result. The four-eyed man admits that it is a battle without magic, but even so, there are not many who can defeat Fay, and he deduces that the MC must be a genius in hand-to-hand combat. Fay gets up saying that she is from the Durahhan family and that therefore it is not over yet, and with a completely new stance, she warns that she cannot lose like this. Lewis notices that she abandoned the spear and imagines that it is a martial art based on striking techniques. She advances without fear, and both prepare their hand-to-hand techniques. She shouts as she uses the crushing punch, striking with full power and making the MC jump in surprise. Since the blow was very similar to the inch power, he says it was a cool technique, but she does not waste time and uses crushing punch 3. He prepares to use his boxing, and the two begin exchanging punches with their techniques. Lewis becomes increasingly excited since he is fighting a strong opponent with all his will. His heart starts beating harder, to the point that Lewis emerges with a completely terrifying aura, leaving the girl in shock, as if she were seeing a demon about to devour her. This makes her body freeze in fear, and because of that, she takes the punch head-on, which, despite blocking it, is completely useless, since she is sent flying badly injured. Even the director is startled upon sensing that aura. Fay is hurled with full force against a tree. The veterans watch this and are outraged that even Fay is being cornered by a commoner. Suddenly, Brian begins to feel intense dizziness, to the point of vomiting. He does not understand why he feels so awful, and, looking at the MC, he cannot describe the horrifying sensation he feels from that aura. Sheath complains that the plan failed, and his friend warns that they need to eliminate Louis Castille at any cost, because if the legend is true, they cannot let him live. The MC remains extremely excited, and Fay is startled when she sees him approaching so fast, but it is too late as she receives a powerful blow that sends her flying. To make things worse, he does not stop advancing even before she hits the ground, and, with his insane aura, begins to blast the ground with a barrage of punches that forces the girl to go completely on the defensive, unable to understand how someone can have so much power and speed. since he is on a completely different level and there is no way to win against that. To make matters worse, another punch, even stronger, comes toward her, and she quickly realizes that at this pace she will be killed. Because of this, she is forced to use her arcane martial skill to defend herself, and the punches of the two collide at maximum force. However, the blow is so strong that it sends her flying with such force that it destroys the trees in its path. After punching with such strength, the MC loses some of his excitement as he returns to normal and realizes that his fist is practically burned, and until then, he did not know what it was like to use magic. Cain, frightened, asks if he is okay, but Louis is actually worried about Fay, who is not near them. At this moment, the veterans appear and say that he is disqualified and has also lost his emblem. They say this and point to the MC's emblem, which is burning until it completely disappears. Cain asks them to wait a minute, since what happened was an accident, but Sheath makes it clear that the director saw everything and asks if he is going to try to help a commoner. He then approaches, saying that the trash should have disappeared already. However, Fay appears asking them to wait, and they turn around in shock, as does Louis, since she is fine despite being injured. Sheath asks if she is also trying to protect him, and whether she does not mind being disqualified for breaking the rules. She tells him to shut up, as she is aware that Louis's emblem burned, and apologizes, since she used magic unintentionally. He also apologizes, since he suddenly became furious. Fay says it is fine, since she was forced to use magic, and that she wants to have a fair match with him when they are enrolled. The veteran asks if this is some kind of joke, since he only has 4 emblems. She takes a cloth out of her pocket and hands it to him as a reward for defeating her. On the cloth, there are many more emblems, totaling 14 in all. In addition, she says that his emblem burned after defeating her, so that should count as a valid record. Sheath remains silent despite being angry. Fay draws Cain's attention and tells him to pay attention, otherwise he will fall behind. She kicks her spear into the air, and after catching it, says that only 10 candidates will pass, and questions what will happen if Louis ends up in 10th place after collecting 14 or more emblems. He laughs, since coincidentally, he was thinking the same thing, and the two of them run off, as they need to collect as many emblems as possible so they do not fall behind. Louis likes the friendships he is making, but an instructor flies toward him and says that he lost his emblem and is therefore disqualified. Then, the two walk outside. Sheath warns that this is not over, but his friend says that if Fay defeats other candidates, then Louis will definitely manage to pass even without participating anymore. However, the guy is so nervous that he says that if a candidate dies in an accident during the test, that would not be anything strange. Brian is hoping that something like that happens, since he cannot forget the sensation from earlier and knows Louis's true identity. After that, the MC hands over the emblems and leaves the academy, even though he really wanted to study at that school, since if he could fuse magic and martial arts, it would be incredible. Then, at night, he walks past a guy and becomes pensive about what he will say to his mother, since she will ask all kinds of questions. Suddenly, the Moyen, the guy walking beside him, attacks from behind, but Louis kicks the dagger and sends the lunatic flying as if he were a soccer ball. The mercenary asks how he noticed, and he replies that the bloodlust was screaming. 2 others appear, and the MC prepares himself, since he needs to give it his all because they are skilled opponents. He pays special attention to one guy who is standing farther back, since he definitely looks dangerous. The blonde orders him not to avert his gaze and attacks, trying to send Louis's head flying. Louis prepares himself and dodges all the attacks. In addition, he grabs his opponent's hand and slams him hard against the ground. However, the blonde reacts quickly with a kick and then retreats. He says that indeed, the MC's perception is superhuman, and that his advanced combat techniques, as well as his intelligence, are exactly as reported. The MC does not understand what he means by that, and the blonde admits that his hand-to-hand combat rivals that of an apprentice, but wants to know about his magic. As he says this, his lackeys fire their magical arrows, catching Louis off guard to the point that he dodges by sheer luck. He realizes that he will have to face those cursed arrows of that method again, and because of that, he decides to use the breathing technique. He knows that by circulating the chi within his body, he can increase his physical strength and speed, so he prepares himself and charges forward with everything he has. The mercenaries fire wildly, but he dodges with his incredible speed, which leaves the masked man shocked, since out of nowhere, he suddenly appears right on top of them, and the blonde takes a kick so powerful that it breaks his arm. The lackeys keep firing until another mercenary appears and lands a solid kick on the MC, who, despite blocking it, feels that the blow was far too powerful. He retreats and knows that his new opponent is far too strong. No sooner does he think that, than he is surrounded once again and forced to dodge the shots without being able to make a single mistake. But suddenly, he falls to the ground. The masked man celebrates since Louis has finally gotten tired and asks if he really is a commoner, since he was far more troublesome than an ordinary apprentice. While he is saying this, the MC opens his eyes and leaps up, grabbing the crossbow, and with a precise attack snaps the lunatic's neck. He also takes advantage of having the crossbow in his hands and fires at all the mercenaries, who are struck in the chest, except for one who blocks the attack and asks if he really pretended to be dead. Louis throws a few caltrops on the ground, and the mercenary claps his hands, saying that it is impressive for someone so young. Louis asks if he does not care about the subordinates who were killed, and the mercenary replies that he does not care about what happens to trash. Louis starts shooting, and the guy easily dodges, and after approaching him, says that if it were not for the orders he received, he would love to have the MC as his disciple. After saying that, he strikes with his magic hammer, and the blow is so powerful that it sends him flying into the forest. While he is still being carried by the impact, the mercenary appears in front of him and, once again summoning his hammer, says that the power of an apprentice is nothing compared to someone of a higher class, then lands another hammer strike that makes the ground explode on impact. Even so, he does not stop and keeps attacking with everything he has until he finally decides to stop, unable to believe that Louis is still alive after taking so many blows. Louis, with multiple fractures, says that he will not die in that place, but the man says it is a pity and summons a giant hammer, since at that point, not even a goddess can save him. After saying that, he attacks with all his power, and all Louis can think is that he definitely cannot die, since he wants to master magic to protect his precious family, and he becomes angry because he wants to change his destiny, no matter the price he will pay. The red aura envelops his body once again, and he punches the hammer, which is enough to completely blow up the forest with the shockwave. The MC falls to the ground coughing, and the mercenary approaches and says it is strange, since it even feels like he is fighting someone with equal power, and he finally understands why they marked the MC as a target to be eliminated. Then, once again, he orders him to die. Before he could deliver the blow, a wind attack flies toward him, and he dodges in shock. However, several wind vortices begin to chase him, and he is frightened by this level of power, since he simply cannot dodge, and his body is struck by thousands of attacks. The MC also does not understand what is happening until the director appears beside him. Aronian says he liked seeing how he suppressed the fury he had, and also tells him to drink a magical healing potion. After that, he looks to the side and sees the mercenary finally falling to the ground. Then he asks who ordered the attack on a candidate from his academy. The man, even knowing he is facing a grandmaster, says not to think he can protect a monster, and, after letting out a macabre laugh, warns that this is only the beginning, and his body explodes without leaving any traces. Aronian cannot believe the man killed himself, and wonders if he is from the Assassin's Guild, or if he might be overthinking it. Suddenly, the MC gets up saying he found the healing potion incredible, since even his fractured bones were completely healed. He also points out that he believes the director did not pass by that place by chance, and wants to understand why he always saves him. He says they will discuss it when they finally arrive at his house, and the MC panics, since he had forgotten about it, and his mother is probably extremely worried. Because of that, he runs like a madman, knowing he will be in trouble. The director invokes his power and orders the place to be cleaned up. Meanwhile, in the city of Mantia, the troublemakers are harassing La Ciela, claiming that she is diverting the milling taxes. She says she is just waiting for her son, but they say it is a lie, and that she needs to be punished. However, before they could do anything, one of them gets kicked in the face and goes flying like a rocket into his other friend. La Ciela is happy that her son has finally arrived home, but soon makes a desperate expression that worries the MC to the point that he asks if everything is all right. She places her hand on his face and asks what happened, since his clothes are torn and there is blood everywhere. He asks her not to worry, saying that his clothes just got caught on a tree during the trial. Max asks if Louis wants trouble again, and questions whether he is trying to pick a fight with a lord, and whether he should call the fighter George again to report what happened. However, Aronian appears flying, commenting that there was apparently a misunderstanding there, and saying that he is the director of the Arcanist Academy. The two panic since they are aware that he is the Grandmaster Aronian, and the director tells them to send his regards to the Lord. Without thinking twice, the boys apologize for any trouble and run away. The director takes advantage of being in the presence of Louis's mother and says that he would like to discuss something. They go inside the house, and the Grandmaster notices which mill the nobles were talking about, but does not understand how it is moving on its own without magic. He also notices that there is flour scattered all over the house. Then La Ciela picks up some fruit and says that she does not really understand how the milling works, since Louis made their lives much easier in many aspects. However, he admits to being worried, since for the director to appear in person, it must be because some problem occurred during the test. He laughs and says it was the opposite, since such a talent had only been seen in the Gaia scriptures. When humanity was under the tyrannical rule of the monsters, a genius emerged among humanity, guided by the goddess, and he comprehended the essence of the elements and created the martial arts. 5 years later, on one day, together with his companions, he defeated the monsters and saved humanity from extinction. The commemorative day on which the sacred calendar was born later came to be called Liberation Day. In the Gaia scriptures, he is called the first hero. La Ciela finds this story fabulous, but the MC finds it strange, since in popular legends there is no hero who saved humanity. The director says there is, and that the hero even appears in a different form, since he was a man with black hair and black eyes. The two are startled upon hearing this, and Aronian adds that this information is a great secret known only to the upper echelons of humanity. This is because the hero certainly saved humanity, but at that moment, madness dwelled in his heart, as he only thought about killing. Thus, he committed a grave and unforgivable sin and was erased from the history of humanity like a curse. The MC stops to think whether this madness dates back to that era. Aronian stands up and explains that this is the reason why in all countries they eliminate people who have black hair and black eyes, and asks whether he really thought he could continue deceiving everyone just by dyeing his hair. La Ciela panics and says that the fault is not his, since the idea was hers, and begs them to spare him since he is a good boy. Louis tells her not to worry and says that if the director wanted him dead, he would have done it long ago, and believes there must be a reason behind this. The director explains that in fact, the MC is incredibly wise for someone who is 13 years old, since he not only resisted the madness, but also mastered it, and that was when he saw the qualities of a new hero. He is surprised to hear about this new hero, and the director explains that the world may seem peaceful, but beneath the surface there is a great darkness that is constantly watching. Louis realized that day that the legends are nonsense, and for that reason, he wants to guide him in the right direction for the good of humanity's future. Saying this, he throws the mace, but the MC catches it without any trouble. The director concludes by saying that, thanks to the efforts of Fay and Cain, most of the candidates failed, and in other words, he passed. So without beating around the bush, he asks whether he would like to receive his personal instruction in addition to entering the Arcanist Academy of Candria. The MC asks whether he is betting on him, since one day he might truly go mad. He barely says this when he is startled to see the mace in his hand being sliced into thousandths. Moreover, Aronian, showing that he is serious, says that if the day comes when the MC truly loses control, he will ensure that he kills him. The next day, Louis is working and his friend asks whether he really received a personal invitation from the director. He replies that yes, but deep down, he knows it was a kind of warning and not an invitation. He also wonders what his connection to the legendary hero might be, in addition to the director asking whether he really believed he could keep deceiving everyone just by dyeing his hair, and also giving the guarantee that if he loses control, he will be eliminated. When they went outside, the MC asked why he had said everything in front of his mother. The director replies that if she knows nothing, she will merely be a burden. He does not like hearing this, and assures him that his mother is not a burden. Aronian warns that, unfortunately, when his true identity is revealed, the family will be in danger, and as a mother, she should understand the situation to a certain extent. He also tells him to become stronger, since the true trial is only beginning. After remembering all of this, he knows that the director is right, and that he needs to become stronger. After that, his younger sister appears and he hugs her. Lana asks whether one day he will return, since she does not want to say goodbye. He assures that he will return during the long breaks, after all that is his home. She asks if he is serious, since her mother said that only bad children break promises. He makes the promise and asks her to stay calm. At that moment, his father points out that a noble is calling for Louis. He goes to see what it is, and the man says that he is the butler of the Aranka family and that the young master invited him to the mansion. The MC realizes that it is an invitation from Cain and that the boy wants to deepen their friendship before the start of classes. He accepts the invitation and they immediately go to the Candria Empire. Upon arriving at the place, he is surprised since the mansion is incredibly huge and the family definitely is as well. Immediately, Cain appears to receive him, and the MC says that he heard the boy caused a huge commotion in the final exam, and that, since he passed thanks to him, he will set aside the bet they made. Cain says that is another matter, since Louis had the ability to pass. After all, he obtained Fay's seal of approval. In addition, he says that they cannot fight during the exam, so the two will be opponents long before classes begin, and asks if he wants to know more about the Magic Academy. At that moment, his mother appears with a frightening expression, asking who the boy is. He replies that he is a friend, but she orders him to be silent. Cain is startled by his own mother, but she walks down the stairs and says that she told him to choose his friendships better, since she has no idea when the gates of the Aranka family became a place where just anyone can enter. Moreover, she says that the MC is not worthy of being his friend, since he only needs to train with his father to aim for the Sage classification. Then, she turns to Louis and asks whether his purpose in getting close to Cain is money or power, and removes her ring, saying that it is worth several gold coins and could allow him to live peacefully for the rest of his life. Then, she throws the ring at the MC and orders him to pick it up quickly and leave that house. Cain becomes angry with his mother, since he does not understand why she would do such a thing, and turns to Louis, begging for forgiveness. However, the MC bends down to pick up the ring and says that he became Cain's friend because he recognized his abilities, and returning the ring, asks whether she believes that her own son's word is worth so little. The boy is surprised by those words, but the woman does not like it at all and shouts, ordering someone to expel the commoner from her house. Cain asks everyone to calm down and points out that Louis has more talent than he does and even broke all the exam records and defeated Fay. His mother laughs at such absurdity since she has never heard of a commoner surpassing wealthy families. Cain says it is not a lie, but Louis points out that if he stays close to Cain, he will be able to make him even stronger. Once again, she becomes furious at the tone of arrogance and shouts, wanting to know how much more he intends to mock the Aranka family. Suddenly, a terrifying aura appears at the door. William, who is Cain's father, asks whether the MC really said that if he stays close to Cain, he will make him stronger. Everyone turns toward him, and the space begins to turn cold with sweat, and she runs, saying that if they leave things as they are, their son will never improve. However, the man walks past her without paying attention and stands before the boys. Immediately, Cain greets his father, and Louis also greets him as Cain's friend, and even thinks that the aura he is feeling is incredible, just like the principal's. William goes straight to the point and asks his son whether Louis's words are true. He replies that, at the very least, the MC has abilities that surpass his own. The man finds that interesting, and releasing his killing intent, asks him to prove it with more than just words. The MC cannot believe the incredible aura before him, so intense that he is unable to breathe. With that, he concludes that the man standing before him definitely intends to kill him. No sooner does he think that than the man merely blinks, and Louis feels a hole in his body. He understands that this willpower is terrifying and expected nothing less from a grandmaster. However, thanks to his continuous monster hunt, he developed enormous resistance to killing intent and believes that if it is only at that level, it will not be a problem. He gathers all the energy he has and begins to release an intense power, creating a draconic aura against the tiger aura. The two powers face each other and reach the point where all that pressure collides. Cain is surprised by his friend's power until the entire aura dissipates and Louis falls to the ground, exhausted. The blonde boy goes to him asking if everything is okay. William then asks the MC why he seeks more strength. He replies that it is to protect his family. William likes what he hears and tells his son that his willpower is very weak and that, because of that, he should learn many things from Louis. His wife simply cannot believe this, and he asks whether she would like to give any opinion. She becomes completely intimidated and answers no. Cain sees this and asks them to go to the training field immediately. After arriving at the place, Cain apologizes once again on behalf of his parents, but Louis says that it is fine, since despite his father being extreme, nothing serious happened. Cain explains that his father is a meritocrat, and since Louis was recognized by him, he believes that Louis is much more suitable to be a child of the Aranka family than he himself is. The MC replies that his abilities were tested by William because of Cain, and that this is already a way of showing love for his son. The blonde boy becomes thoughtful about this, and remembers that he almost never left that mansion since childhood, and everything he has in mind are memories of eating, training, and sleeping. His father's wish is to raise him so that he becomes a great sage like his grandfather. Because of this, he believes that perhaps he only wanted his father to acknowledge him and sees that place as a prison, since even breathing requires permission from the guards. The adults around him kept praising him as a young master, but his status and talent are nothing more than chains that bind him. The more trapped he feels, the more he longs for the outside world and wanted to be like a bird flying across the continent. He knows that this is a world where strength matters, and currently, he is very weak. He goes to the swords, and after picking one up, says that it is the only way to break these chains. Therefore, he wants to enter the same academy his father graduated from, and, in this way, will seek permission to live freely. In short, he is counting on Louis's friendship. Louis likes hearing this, and prepares for the two of them to train. Meanwhile, William, observing from afar, asks the butler if the investigations have been finished. He replies that they have, and says that Louis is definitely not ordinary, since according to intelligence information, during the exam, the boy used mysterious combat techniques that no one had ever seen, and not only broke previous records, but also defeated Fay, who was even using magic. Another thing he discovered was that Louis is also respected by Aronian, who apparently even fought against the Assassin's Guild the night before to protect him. William thinks about this, since apparently the MC is quite a troublemaker. The butler takes the opportunity to ask why he allowed Louis to have contact with the young master. He replies that troublemakers attract danger, and when they challenge these dangers, a person ends up growing, and he firmly believes that the MC can make Cain become stronger. The blonde boy is excited about the fight, as is Louis, who asks him to use all the power he has. William comments that his son definitely has a better eye for people than he himself does. The boy charges forward with everything, using his wind ability, but the MC instantly moves and stops his punch in midair, since if it had continued, it would have hit his face head-on. He says that accelerating with magic is good, but the movements are a bit too linear. Cain admits he is surprised, since even using magic he was easily counterattacked, and he understands why Fay was unable to defeat him. However, while saying this, he notices that the MC is acting strangely and therefore asks if something is wrong. Louis draws his sword and asks if he has ever felt something strange about his fighting style. Cain replies that his techniques are secret arts passed down through his family. The MC says that, in fact, there is another path. The boy does not understand, since that would mean there is a path different from that of his father and his grandfather. Louis sheaths his sword, and taking a dagger, asks if by any chance he does not want to surprise his father. William watches from afar. The MC explains that in martial arts, speed is an absolute weapon. After all, speed does not mean only movement speed, but also includes reaction time and rapid decision-making. Thus, his natural speed combines well with support magic of the wind attribute, and grip techniques are indifferent. Therefore, he suggests that just because his grandfather mastered it does not mean that he himself can, and he even believes that the fact that his father stopped at the Grandmaster title may be exactly because of this. Louis warns that to maximize his talent, he needs to switch to a specialized combat style, and asks if he is prepared for that. Cain, holding the daggers, says not to put him in the same group as the pampered nobles, since he will do anything to become free. They continue discussing the next steps until the MC asks to show Cain's father the boy's true determination. Having said that, both rush toward William without thinking twice and use everything they have. The butler prepares to intervene, but the head of the family asks him to do nothing and begins by dodging his son's attack. Next, Louis advances and begins attacking in every possible way, since daggers are fast and maneuverable weapons, and he knows he needs to exploit their advantages by combining any combat technique possible, as he needs to exceed the opponent's reaction speed. William is surprised by this speed, but even so, he dodges all the butterfly strikes that Louis delivers. This time, Cain uses his wind magic to increase his speed and attacks together with Louis, applying even more pressure. At this moment, he himself is left speechless, since his body, together with the dagger, feels much lighter, and the sensation is like that of a free bird. He loves what he is feeling, and the fact that he can merge dagger techniques with wind magic. This draws William's attention, who is surprised to see his son's speed, but especially to hear him shout that this is his martial path. However, before being hit, he releases all his aura, which sends the boys flying back, and, irritated, asks if he is abandoning the clan's techniques to prove his own will. Even though they are intimidated, the MC shouts to accelerate, and Cain does so. They position themselves, and, with the acceleration buff, both run at extreme speed, each to one side, and apply increasing pressure with their attacks. William dodges them, but aims for his son's dagger, asking if that is all he has. And when he is close to grabbing the dagger, the blonde boy jumps back to reposition himself. His father does not like this, and shouts, calling him a coward, and therefore advances to attack. At this moment, Cain remembers Lewis's words, that retreating is not a weakness, but merely a drawn-back punch. Therefore, he activates his ability once again and advances, managing to dodge the punch with his tornado and positioning himself with Lewis so that both attack at the same time. Once again, William is startled since the two are completely synchronized. A few minutes earlier, the MC said that there is a baseball technique called change of pace and demonstrated the technique by attacking with his dagger. Cain tries to defend himself, but Louis simply changes the direction of the strike. He explains that it is a technique that deceives opponents by using variations in speed and that even casual movements become feints when used well, and he believes the boy can maximize this with the speed of the dagger. Both attack again, and William goes back to dodging all the blows until Cain puts into practice what he learned. But his father says the strike is far too slow. However, the strike changes direction and grazes past the side of his father's head, even managing to tear a piece of his clothing. The two find it incredible that they finally manage something and attack once more. However, William says that is enough, and the two stop without reacting. He calls to his son, who is already completely exhausted, and before leaving, asks him not to dishonor the name of the Aranka family. Cain, completely excited, assures him that he will never do that. William then leaves and reflects on the consecutive strikes at close range. He also thinks about the new possibility of attacking while retreating, finds it very interesting, and believes that he could apparently learn a lot even from children. The MC, observing him from afar, comments that it was a good chance to train with a grandmaster, but it is already over. Cain celebrates since his father recognized him for the first time, and he is already feeling better than he has in his entire life, and for that reason, he would like to give a gift. They go to the family library, and Louis is astonished by the absurd number of books. The blonde boy arrives with a box, which is his way of showing gratitude, since he would not have found that path so quickly. The MC is startled since the box contains several scrolls, books, and a lot of money. Cain warns that they are not just Academy books, but magic books that common people rarely see. He takes the books in his hands, and his friend explains what types of magic the books are about. One in particular is about magical awakening. It is a ritual in which one senses the elements through the statue of Gaia, but it is quite expensive since it costs 10 gold coins to do it. The MC cannot come to terms with the absurd amount since he has many expenses both at the orphanage and at the academy. Cain asks him not to worry since it is free if done through the academy. He also says that he will obtain credits that he will use to pay rent or buy books, and, in any case, asks him to accept his gift and consider that the bet they made earlier is settled. Louis says he sees no problem and remembers when he talked with Julian about how magical pharmacists earn very well, and he wonders if the books are related to that. Only then does he get an idea, since if he invents things using the knowledge from his past life, he could make money quickly. Therefore, he asks the boy if his family happens to have connections with the Merchants Guild. Cain questions this sudden question, but he simply says that it is a secret and that he will find out eventually. 1 week later, the entrance ceremony of the Arcanist Academy arrives. The MC is happy since the day has finally come. A girl passes by his side and wonders if the scent she smelled is the new fashionable cologne, and by the price, she believes the MC's parents must be at least counts. For that reason, she gets his attention, introduces herself, and asks if he would like her to show him around the academy. Lewis asks if she is serious, since it would help a lot, and also introduces himself. Rose uses her charm and asks him to follow her, but deep down, she admits that she does not recognize the name Louis Kirill and believes him to be some illegitimate son of a noble. She introduces the academy and explains that since the emperor grew old, the The imperial heirs have been fighting against the nobles and great families of that place, and thanks to Aronion's efforts, the academy remains peaceful, but behind the scenes, there is a fierce battle for resources. She pinches his face and says that he is one of those being watched, and therefore must give his best. But her real question is which faction his family supports. At that moment, someone approaches, commenting that the person there is probably Louis, the plebeian freshman who broke all records. The one who says, "This is the veteran Brian," who also introduces himself. The girl is startled, since he definitely smelled of expensive perfume, and she leaves angrily, saying that she only wasted her time. MC also introduces himself, and the boy asks him not to mind Rose, and explains that the academy is basically a miniature version of the Empire, and that there are people like them. At that moment, Cain appears calling for Louis, and Brian soon withdraws, saying that he needs to greet the new students. The veteran leaves, but not with the look of someone seeking friendly relations. The blonde asks what he was talking about with Brian, and MC asks if the two know each other. Cain replies that he does not, and only knows that the veteran is the rector's son. At that moment, Fay approaches, saying that she does not like people with weak will, and Cain takes it as an indirect jab. The two greet the group, and Louis thanks her once again for having helped during the test. Fay says it is not necessary, since he passed by his own strength, but assures that next time she will not lose. Cain does not like being constantly ignored, and she tells him to get stronger if he wants attention. The argument continues intensely until Miliana drags her friend away, since they need to finish the registration. At that moment, Cain takes the opportunity to hand over a huge sack of gold and says that it is his share, since he followed the instructions when they went to the trading company in the village of Berna. Cain was intrigued by the potion, which was MC's so-called secret, and MC explains that it is a new perfume he invented, and the subtle aroma sets it apart from common ones. Cain admits that the smell is very good, but does not know if it will be profitable. Returning to the present, he says that he did not imagine it would be so expensive, and even wants to give some to his mother. MC asks to keep this secret between them, and they go to the reception. The examiner hands the credit card to Louis and asks him to become a master as quickly as possible. People begin to gossip about whether the person in front of them is the plebeian who entered the academy, thanks to Cain and Fay, and think it is a disgrace to allow something like that. And from what they heard, Sheath was exposed because of him as well. MC becomes intrigued upon hearing this and asks if Sheath was really expelled. Cain explains that this veteran was the one who hired the Assassin's Guild to eliminate him, and when the director found out, he expelled him on the spot. Louis finally understands what happened, but his friend gives a warning that Sheath has an older brother at the academy named Jess and believes that the boy will want to cause trouble. The madman passes by staring at the two. After that, in the main hall, the director welcomes everyone and asks them to be proud of having reached where they are. He also warns that this is only the beginning of becoming truly powerful. He then says that the freshman's representative, Neil Gunn, will go up on stage next to give a speech, and the boy does so, but leaves everyone horrified, not understanding what is happening, just like the examiners, who question whether the so-called fire hair is an idiot because Neil is completely naked, ordering all the idiots to listen, since his goal is to defeat each and every one of them until they piss themselves in fear. The students shout, asking who the bastard thinks he is, since he cannot act high and mighty just because he came in first in the second test, and he shouts back, telling everyone to shut up. The professor sees all of this and already feels that it will be a problematic year. Neil, excited, prepares his axe and throws it toward all the students until it embeds itself in the ground. Standing in front of the MC, he jumps onto the tip of the axe and announces that his main target is Louis, and asks the two of them to fight. Cain steps in front, warning that the entrance ceremony is still taking place. Neil asks if he is perhaps afraid and points at the blonde guy, since he thinks the kid is pathetic, someone who only barks and does not bite. He becomes extremely irritated by this and prepares to throw a punch, but the MC grabs his arm and asks him to calm down. Neil orders the two to attack at the same time, until Brian appears and says that the fire-haired guy and Louis are two of the few talented commoners in that place, and that, because of that, they should get along, since if they act selfishly, they will not last very long at the academy. Neil tells him to leave, since he is not interested in small fry. The veteran gets irritated by this, and people start gossiping that commoners really have no manners and do not even know why they managed to enroll. Cain warns that some people only learn the hard way, Neil guarantees that he will crush him first, until a professor appears saying that fights between students are forbidden and will only be allowed during classes, exams, and official tournaments, and already warns that he will be exposed if he breaks this rule. After saying that, he asks if he understood perfectly what was said. The fire-haired guy realizes the predicament he could get into and starts laughing, since being exposed would be a problem, and leaves, saying that they can fight another time, but tells Louis to wait for it. With everything resolved, the professor says that the ceremonies have concluded and that classes will begin the next day. The MC wonders why the hell Neil started a fight out of nowhere. Cain comments that it is all the muscular guy's fault, but Fay hits him on the head, since they were one step away from being expelled, but reveals that she also has some blame, since during the final test, she ended up fighting Neil and, due to the time limit, the match ended in a draw, and because the guy heard the rumors that she lost to Louis, he created this obsession. After saying that, she says she would feel guilty if he were expelled because of her. The MC asks her not to worry, since she is not to blame for anything, but Cain drags him outside, since, from the looks of it, they are already hated enough in that place. They go to the shop at the academy, and Louis is shocked by how expensive things are. The attendant says they are not, and shows a pillow that costs 30 silver coins, as well as another one stuffed with magical herbs that costs only 5 gold coins. Cain tells him not to worry, since he has money and credit and needs to buy the basic things. Louis says he wants the new life kit, which is the cheapest of all, for 100 silver coins. He feels relieved, since he earned money from the perfumes earlier and will send the rest to the orphanage. He also knows that magical potions are essential for training, and because of that, he needs to find more ways to earn money. Fay calls her friend to go to the dormitory and asks if the magical awakening ritual will be the next day. He notices how much money the girls have and becomes even more motivated to work hard to earn a lot of money. After that, at the dormitory, the MC goes looking for room 60 and hopes he does not get stuck with some thug or cheater until he passes by a dorm room where a mattress was thrown out. And when he looks inside, he sees several students picking on another who only remains silent in the face of the provocations. This makes the guys even angrier, to the point of asking if he is perhaps looking to pick a fight. At that moment, Louis strikes a blow to the guy's muscle, and he starts screaming in pain since he can't even move his arm. He warns that duels are forbidden and that they could be expelled. The students insist they haven't done anything yet and charge forward since the MC threw the first punch, so it will be self-defense. However, he blocks and counters the punch in a way that ends up hitting one of their friends. Because of that, he asks if he actually did anything at all, and the guy starts crying, wanting to know why his friend suddenly punched him. Instantly, the MC approaches and kicks the guy's leg, causing his leg to hit another student in the groin. The boy doesn't understand what is happening, but because of that distraction, he receives another blow, which he once again feels throughout his entire body, making all the boys fall down. The troublemakers don't understand what the hell is going on and point out that it is all Louis's fault. The MC tells them not to blame others for their own bodies acting strangely, but the senior claims that he was definitely controlled and calls him a monster. The MC doesn't like that at all and starts approaching the seniors, but the purple-haired freshman pulls him back, since it's not wise to fight there. Because of that, Louis tells everyone to leave since they will be in trouble if the principal finds out, and the seniors immediately leave. The MC introduces himself and asks the name of his new roommate. The boy says nothing and only shows that his name on the mattress is Kara Candace. But after doing so, he walks past and leaves Louis alone. He realizes that apparently the boy is very shy and definitely suffered bullying, and all he hopes is that the next day nothing bad happens during the ritual. However, still at night, 2 suspicious people are sabotaging something. The next day at the Temple of the Arcanist Academy, the MC is surprised since he is standing before the goddess of that world. The professor tells them to contemplate the great goddess Gaia. Long ago, the goddess created a world where humans and monsters could coexist, but over time, the monsters began to exert their overwhelming natural power. Dragons ruled the skies, behemoths ruled the land, and krakens ruled the sea, and countless humans perished in the chaos. The goddess became deeply angered by this, so she granted her blessing to humans who did not possess magical power. Thus, humanity began to understand the essence of water, earth, wind, and fire. From then on, martial arts were created, and after difficult battles, they escaped annihilation. The professor announces that at that moment, the students will receive the goddess's blessing and awaken the true nature of that world. The MC reflects that until that moment, there had been no mention of the first hero. Suddenly, the professor approaches him and calls both him and Kara to go to the other side. He shows them the circuits where they must sit, since if they have magical talent, they will be able to feel the elements. But he warns that if they are trash, they won't be able to feel anything and assures them that the academy does not need them. The professor announces that the ritual will begin shortly, and Louis watches without understanding whether the professor hates him or something like that. The professor continues all his explanations about the goddess and magic, until, sometime later, he activates the magical prayer circles, and all the elements are activated by the statue of the goddess Gaia herself, who opens her eyes and emits an intense glow, leaving the students frightened since she simply appears as if she were a hologram. They ask if what they are seeing are the elements, and each one is struck by a different element, such as fire and water. Neil's aura becomes extremely intense, and the students cannot believe that a commoner received two attributes, earth and fire, and they do not understand how the guy can control magic so easily. The boy is indeed excited and assures that whatever element he received, he will find a way to control it at maximum power. He looks in Louis's direction and says that someone who cannot awaken could never be his rival, and therefore asks the boy not to disappoint him. The students start gossiping that apparently the MC did not awaken any element, and he becomes worried since he is unable to feel anything and considers that maybe it is because he is not originally from that world. However, in his fight against Cain, he is certain that he could vaguely feel a strange power, but at that moment, it is as if his mind is being suffocated. He becomes furious because he wants to leave his willpower recorded, and with all his fury, he shatters the shackles of his mind, creating a gigantic mental explosion that draws everyone's attention. He is puzzled since he is seeing 4 colors of light and does not know what they are. The professor, looking at him, is in disbelief, as he created a magic circle to separate the mind and does not understand what happened. Louis sees a ball of energy flying, but when he tries to touch it, he cannot. He does not understand, since he can feel its presence but cannot touch it, and he tries at all costs but fails. The professor observes this and finds it amusing, since merely escaping mental isolation on one's own is not permission to awaken. After all, the special magic circle blocks the flow between spirit and element, and a magic item that weakens the connection between people and elements is something impossible to overcome. Still looking at Louis, he warns that he should blame himself for making so many enemies, and that, since he accepted the small gift he received, he cannot give up until the ritual ends. Night falls and the students begin to leave, but the MC and Kara have still made no progress. He continues trying to concentrate until Kara suddenly stops and points toward the ground, saying it is a trap. Louis does not like this at all, so he stands up and throws a punch that completely destroys the floor. He is also startled since a strange crystal was underneath it. Kara leaves and says that it is probably the item that was hindering the progress. The MC thanks him for the help and wonders if it was a coincidence that the item was there, but considers the second possibility since the professor may be sabotaging him. He says that it does not matter, since at that moment, things will truly begin, and he starts to concentrate. Spirits begin to fly toward him, and the remaining students are surprised since the vortex forming beside Louis is the same as Neil's. The professor is outraged, unable to understand how the MC woke up, since not even a master should be capable of breaking the orb's confinement circle. Suddenly, he is startled when someone places a hand on his shoulder, and he sees that it is the director, who heads toward Louis. People become intrigued as to why Aronian is present, and whether there is some secret involving the commoner. In contrast, the professor grows irritated, since the director appeared at the worst possible moment, and his plan was almost exposed. He takes the opportunity to go outside, and tells Jess that the MC failed, and that, since he does not want any more trouble, he should stay away for a while. The boy says that it is fine and remains watching. Back in the hall, the director asks his summon to keep an eye on the movements around them, and explains that, as for completely removing the obstacles, everything now depends on Louis. The MC continues concentrating until he notices the elements Cain talked about so much. He remembers that in the library, his friend explained that the elements are the foundations of the world created by the goddess. The MC questions why humans need to awaken first, since monsters can use magic from birth. Cain replies that the explanation is simple, because monsters have magical crystals inside them. These crystals contain various elemental powers, so monsters have high affinity from birth and can use magic through the magical crystals. Humans, on the other hand, must perform the awakening ritual, and only afterward will be recognized by an element. Cain explains that one must awaken an element with good compatibility, since once recognized by the element, all that remains is to train the mind and body. Lewis watches the crystal after the explanation, and his friend concludes by saying that everything in that world is made of the goddess's elements. He observes the blue element and believes that perhaps water is compatible. He tries to touch the orb and, at first, imagines several mermaids, but he also visualizes a demonic kraken, and that aura paralyzes his body, causing him to start losing control. The blue element begins to clash with the aura inside him, and the elements combine. However, the director, who is observing, becomes worried, since what is happening is bad, as Louis is losing control. Because of this, he activates the goddess's barrier and, with the help of the statue, creates a protective cube around the MC, who continues to lose more and more control. The students who remain in the hall try to understand what powerful magical pressure that is, and do not understand why the director sealed the boy away, since they cannot see anything. Aronian shouts for Louis not to let himself be influenced by the environment, and that voice echoes strongly in his mind until he gradually recovers and gains full control of his body. He feels relieved since it was a close call, but he is puzzled by the elements beside him as they are different, and he takes them in his hand and tries to understand what it means until the orb leaps and reveals that he has obtained all 4 elements. The outer aura dissipates, and the director feels that he can now undo the protective cube. But the intensity of the vortex that erupts upon awakening a skill is far too intense, displaying all possible colors. The students present are also frightened, since they have never seen anything like it, because the MC's aura is far more terrifying than Neil's. The director, however, is pleased as his expectations have been exceeded. Lewis continues observing the elements in his hand until all 4 enter his body, and he imagines that the elements, like elemental particles, are constantly in motion, and that he needs to harmonize the flow of chi and his breathing to make the circulation smoother. He continues concentrating more and more until he finally unlocks his full potential, but the power is so great that he releases a new power. Several ice crystals begin to form around him and burst forth, destroying the entire hall. Aronian is startled at the sight, and the MC continues releasing his ice aura, and this vision pleases the director, as it is something incredible. However, the power is so overwhelming that the ice begins to solidify throughout the entire hall, forcing the students to run. But it is useless, as they are completely frozen, since that power has taken over the entire main hall.
Aronian realizes that the situation is bad and needs to suppress that power, so he begins to recite his incantation and activates the ability Candria, the flame barrier. The powerful fire takes over the hall, managing to unfreeze the students, and also puts pressure on the MC, who is channeling power non-stop. The pressure is so strong in the hall that it is felt by other teachers throughout the academy. After the power finally subsides, the director wonders what element he saw, since it resembled ice. Louis finishes concentrating and realizes that the elements are moving at high speed and even seem to be merging. He knows that this means that, depending on the combination, a chemical reaction can occur and create a new element. In addition, the wind and water elements mixed together are completely filling his meridians, and he does not know what he should do about it. Since he needs to talk to someone about it, he finally wakes up and realizes that the director is in front of him. Aronian snaps his fingers and releases the barrier he had created to contain the power. Then he asks if he understands what he just did. The MC sees some students lying on the ground and says that he apparently ended up doing something foolish and that the director saved him. Aronian summons his magical creature and says that he is going back to the room while he cleans the place, and tells the MC to follow him since he probably has some questions. Thus, the two walk toward the exit. Already in the director's office, he congratulates him, since, from what he noticed, he managed to awaken all 4 attributes. Lewis replies that yes, and shows that he really succeeded. The director says that to handle the elements so smoothly, he does not believe he is a newly awakened apprentice and that the talent is real. In addition, he gives him a book to study magic that he himself used to study. Then he says that he possesses the wind and earth elements, so for fire and water, he will need to ask Fay and Miliana, since they are 2 people from large families. Suddenly he tells Kylie to come in, and a woman teleports into the room. He explains that Kylie is a trustworthy assistant, and that from that moment on, she will be protecting him. They go to a training area where the walls are reinforced with earth magic. Kylie asks him to show the elements, and the MC explains that he discovered it by chance during the ritual, since if he accelerates the movement of two elements and mixes them, a new element will be born, and he even named this new element the ice element. The director is surprised, since he had never heard of mixing two elements to create a new one. The girl is surprised, since she is indeed witnessing a new element, and excited, she rushes forward because she wants to feel this power. She delivers numerous consecutive punches that are blocked by him until Louis prepares himself and counterattacks, leaving the girl so startled that she has to retreat. She tries to understand why his movements became faster and realizes that, in fact, she became slower, probably because of the ice effect. Still intrigued, she asks if the fusion of two elements has ever been done by anyone at any time, and the director replies that no, since it is something unprecedented, and ever since magic appeared, people have studied its power infinitely. Many geniuses in history have dedicated their lives to magic, but none have ever managed to fuse two elements. Most people can only control a single attribute, and only a few awaken to multiple attributes. Even the strongest saint of the empire, Lady Miriam, the unique genius of the eastern region, only managed to control 3 elements. She also tried to fuse 2 attributes once, but failed miserably because the mind and body cannot keep up. The MC is surprised to hear this, as he did not know that the human body cannot withstand the fusion of attributes. The director explains that for humans to use magic, they must resist the power of the elements with both body and mind. So when he accelerated the attributes, it required willpower to guide them. Therefore, if he tries to guide multiple elements at the same time, this power would collide within the person themselves, costing their own life. Kylie does not hide her surprise, as she is facing a child who can rival even a saint. Kylie gathers her energy and activates her flaming fists as she wants to test him once again. The two resume exchanging blows, and the director comments that she formed a hypothesis that, to handle multiple attributes simultaneously, one must obtain a body similar to that of a dragon that can withstand the collision of elements or use magic through magical crystals, just as monsters do. Louis asks about the results of the research. He replies that it was a disaster, as all the experiments conducted within the empire failed, and eventually the entire concept was considered forbidden, and he never even dreamed that someone would break this taboo.
The MC reflects on this as he is seeing the multiple attributes circulating separately, preventing them from colliding. Kylie lands a kick, telling him not to regret what he has achieved. He says he understands, as he is aware that he can indeed become a source of trouble. She confirms this as if his secret leaks, there is no way to know what will happen to him, and even though the director ordered her to protect him, it is a fact that she does not like problems, so she asks him not to do anything unnecessary. Louis asks him not to worry, as he will say that he awakened to the water attribute, and the ice element is just an application of it. The director becomes confused by this, and he explains that his willpower is stronger than most people's, and because of that asks to be attacked once again. Kylie does not hesitate and charges at him, and he demonstrates what he said about the water element, as when it is subjected to a certain pressure, it can be used in that way. The girl is surprised by this, as is the director, as he has just invented the water element ability Superionic Ice Form. Aronian is surprised, as that is not magic, and she questions how he transformed ordinary water into ice, since it not only does not melt even under extreme flames, but is also radiating heat. He explains that liquids have the property of changing form under extreme pressure and basically used this concept. The director says that there are indeed many things without explanation in that world, and because of that, he should go see him whenever he wants, as he will teach him the correct way to use his powers, and if he makes new discoveries, he will also give him proper credit. Kylie asks if he will really protect the child, as what just happened could be mere coincidence, since it is not written in any magic book. He says he is aware of that, especially because some spells written in books are said to be products of coincidence, and he does not want to deny any possibility. Kylie accepts this, as it is the director's will, and using her fire magic, she guarantees that she will protect the MC properly. Aronian asks Louis to return as classes start the next day, and also gives him a mental recovery potion. He is surprised, as he had no idea that there were also magical potions for the mind. After that, he returns to his dormitory even without sleep, and believes he should meditate until the next day. After opening the door, he notices that Kara is still awake so late and asks if he had been waiting for him. Then he thanks him for giving the tip about the trap, as the director said that a rare artifact was installed in the circle, and curious asks how he noticed. The boy says nothing and simply hands over a card that the MC takes in his hand and realizes it is from the Gandis Trading Company, and it makes sense that he is so knowledgeable about things. He then asks if he did not think that by helping him he might become a target of some problematic people. Kara simply walks to the door and, before leaving, thanks him and closes the door. Lewis is left confused about why that happened, since the boy is the son of a merchant and will definitely need his help in the future. The next morning in the training hall, everyone is gathered, and Derek introduces himself as the physical training instructor and says that he will teach the fundamentals of martial arts, since with his instructions, everyone will have perfect bodies. However, the positions the teacher demonstrates only leave the students frightened, thinking he is crazy, except for Louis, who is amazed and says that the body and mind are the foundation of martial arts. The teacher likes hearing that and moves almost instantly behind him. As he approaches, he says it is perfect, since every part, from head to toe, has been completely trained and is a masterpiece created by the gods. Louis is terrified by how clingy the teacher is, and Derek tells Cain that he is useless since he has no muscle at all and it is pointless being from a great family. He also states that the great families have declined greatly in quality and tells everyone to get ready since the class is about to begin, and he will ask the veterans to demonstrate some of the training equipment. This draws the students' attention since the veterans have barely entered the room and are already saying that everyone is useless because they lost to commoners. The MC and Cain just watch until the teacher tells them to stop the nonsense since they want to see a demonstration. One of them says that is fine and goes to the machine. He prepares himself and says that the weights have been enhanced with earth magic, and using 1 ton starts training his chest. Everyone is surprised, as they do not believe it is possible for someone to lift 1 ton so casually. Then a girl goes to the circle that spins at high speed, showing incredible balance. Another runs on the treadmill using weights of 250 kilograms. The teacher announces that the demonstration is over and that it is time for the students to try. The first one almost faints since the weight does not move. The same happens with the balance machine and even the treadmill, which throws the students away. The veterans ask if this is a joke and if they are so spoiled since they are too weak. However, this does not last long, as one of the veterans points to the side, saying there is a monster in that room, since he sees the MC using the chest machine with 10 tons as if it were nothing. The same goes for the treadmill, as he is running at a colossal speed. Lastly, the balance machine, since the speed is so high that it almost creates a tornado. All the veterans are terrified and claim that this is impossible and that he is probably using some kind of body enhancement. However, the surprise does not end there, as soon after Neil starts training his chest with 15 tons. He also runs on the treadmill with 20 tons on his back, which is enough to leave the veteran group shocked. The boy throws the weights on the ground and tells the MC to ignore the other trash, since they will use that training to decide who is superior. He cannot believe this absurdity, since the class is only basic training and the goal is simply to train the body. The veterans hear them arguing, and Marcus, furious, asks if he was really insulted. Because of that, he tells them not to be arrogant just because they have a little power, since that training is the most basic of the basics, and questions what their attributes are. Neil shows that he has a dual attribute. The veteran is immediately shocked, as he had no idea that a commoner could possess both fire and earth attributes, and this could be problematic. Neil asks what the MC's attribute is, and he, hiding that he possesses all 4, replies that his attribute is water. The veteran bursts into laughter as he considers the water attribute the most pathetic of all, and claims that with a useless element the power will be wasted, and therefore asks what he plans to do with water besides soaking someone. Louis does not understand what is so funny about this attribute. Miliana explains that it is an arcane martial attribute, and only those who truly have the aquatic blade as an attack move can do anything with it. Therefore, it is an element specialized in defense and support, so compared to other attributes, it tends to be looked down upon. Only then does the MC realize that the water attribute is poorly regarded. Marcus provokes again, saying that no matter how strong the body is, if someone has the water attribute as their element, the future will be bleak. After all, there has never been a great master of the water attribute in history. The students ask Miliana not to worry about these provocations, since she has this attribute. The MC intervenes and asks if someone who only has the water attribute is really limited. The veteran replies that it is just common sense and that ordinary people would never understand it. Everyone begins to grow furious as the provocations do not stop, and both classes start insulting each other. Jess goes to the teacher and asks if they were called there to serve as examples to the new students. Then, knowing that to use magic, one must strengthen the body, he says that the best thing they can do is endurance training. For that reason, he proposes a combat combined with endurance training, as he wants to show how imposing the water attribute is. Cain tells the MC that that veteran is Sheath's brother, and since the water attribute is not suitable for protecting the body, it means that the guy wants to take advantage of that to beat him up. Anyway, Lewis goes to the teacher and says he does not believe there are superior or inferior attributes, and Derek understands that this means he is accepting the challenge. He replies yes, as he will prove his point against the veterans. Cain asks if he is sure, but he tells him not to worry. Then the teacher informs that magic will only be allowed in the central area, and that they must show their proud bodies. However, avoiding attacks is completely forbidden. Immediately, Neil gets excited about this opportunity, and, activating his firepower, says that he will finally have a fair fight and points out that everyone is weak. Marcus realizes that the dual attribute will be a problem, but he is determined to deal with the MC first, and activating his ability creates his earth armor and charges forward without thinking twice. However, he takes a punch to the mouth from Neil that sends him flying like a cannonball. The veterans are shocked by this, and the fire-haired guy says that a dog does nothing but bark. This provocation irritates Marcus, who cannot understand how his armor was destroyed with a single blow, considering that the earth attribute is regarded as the most durable. Jess orders the other two students to advance at the same time, and both begin attacking Neil, who, excited, rips off his own shirt and starts blocking the blows. He says that it does not hurt at all, and grabbing one's leg, throws him against the other, sending both flying out of the arena. At that moment, Marcus appears behind him, but when he lands a punch, he realizes it was so useless that his own armor breaks. He cannot understand how something like that happened and starts screaming in pain. Neil laughs, since he thought the mosquito had landed on his back, and only then does the veteran realize that Neil used magic to defend a part of his body and has no idea how an apprentice could have learned that so quickly. Neil tells him to shut up, and landing a kick, launches the guy like a rocket against the wall. The teacher sees the result and tells them to learn as much as possible if they don't want to end up like the veteran on the wall. The MC asks if that wasn't too much, but at that moment another veteran heads toward him, as well as the girl. Cain warns that he won't let them interfere, just like Fay, who also wants to show the power of her attributes, so both of them block the attacks that were heading toward the MC. Lewis finds this interesting and calls Jess for the final match. Jess points out that the MC must be the leader of everyone, since he is ignorant and arrogant, but he is facing someone from the Harkey family. Because of that, he says he will teach him some manners, then advances at high speed and activates his wind ability, which creates a cutting attack that is blocked by the MC. The guy is startled and asks if that is an ice shield. Louis keeps blocking, and the ice starts moving toward the boy, who is startled when he sees that, to the point of needing to retreat. He sees his hand frozen and asks if that is really water. Louis replies that it is, and that it can be understood as an advanced use of water magic. Miliana, watching this from afar, is enchanted by what Louis just did. The veterans are confused, since they have never heard of an ice shield or the water element being able to do that. And Jess starts to lose his patience, since the MC is becoming more and more arrogant for having strange techniques. He knows that at this rate things will get complicated, and seeing his colleagues getting beaten by Neil, he thinks it is a great opportunity to change his plans. So he immediately goes in front of the boy, and the fire-haired guy gets excited since he also wanted to hit him. However, he is not fast enough to land his punch, and by missing, becomes even angrier and starts attacking in all directions. But Jess dodges everything with his speed increased by the wind element and leads Neil toward the MC. The furious boy keeps chasing him and slams the ground hard, forcing Lewis to jump back because of the impact. At that moment, the veteran takes the opportunity to attack from behind, but the MC defends once again and says that the boy is pathetic, since he kept talking about pride but set up a tactic to attack from behind, and that nobles are definitely worthless. Jess says that, as a noble, he simply made the best decision for victory. At that moment, Neil comes attacking, since he is irritated and tries to hit the MC, who barely dodges and realizes that 2 against 1 will be difficult. Jess bursts out laughing at this and takes advantage of the opening to attack, but the fire-haired guy pushes him since he doesn't want anyone interfering, and he gets irritated by that because he cannot understand how an idiot does not realize that teamwork is the best option. Neil says that the annoyance is gone and starts attacking like crazy since he had been eager to fight Louis. The teacher analyzes the fight and concludes that the boy is so strong that he might one day surpass William. The MC manages to see the direction of all the blows, and after blocking the last one, points out what the guy's weakness is and lands a direct hit on his throat, making him cough like crazy. At that moment, Fay shouts to be careful. At that moment, Neil grabs his arm and gets excited since he finally caught him. Then with a headbutt, he makes him feel what real pain is and says that the fun is just beginning. The MC says that the school rules state that one must not intentionally hurt others and that he crossed that line. Because of this, he begins to release his power, and that only makes the boy even more excited, thinking the fight is going to become even more interesting, and he asks to display the proud body he possesses, since that is what the teacher requested. At that moment, his body begins to freeze, and Louis warns that things are going to get complicated. The boy realizes he can no longer move and shouts that the pain he is feeling is incredible, but he releases his firepower to the maximum and breaks all the ice that was on his body. With that, he says that by fighting against Louis, he can become even stronger and therefore asks to continue. Going back to the past, Neil was calmly drinking water by a river, and all he could think about was pain. At that moment, a pack appears and scares him, since they suddenly charge at him out of nowhere and bite his arm and his leg. He grabs the wolf's jaw and, using tremendous strength, manages to tear the monster in half as if it were paper. He understood that pain is proof that you are alive. Pain makes a person stronger, and only those who can live in that world are the strongest, and back to reality, all he asks for is more pain. He leaps to attack and shouts that both are monsters hungry for power. Louis prepares himself, blocks the punch, and throws the boy to the ground. Then he lands a direct kick to his face and starts attacking from all possible directions. Cain begins to worry that at that pace, Neil might end up dying and thinks it would be better for the two to stop the fight before it gets worse. However, the fire-haired boy cannot stop attacking, and the MC becomes worried since he does not know if he will be able to stop him without breaking the school rules and believes he should freeze his movements. With that, he lands an ice punch that launches Neil with full force against the wall to the point that he trembles from so much pain. But that only makes him even more excited, to the point of becoming even stronger with his firepower. The teacher realizes that things are becoming even more interesting. The boy says he will not give up so easily and asks to fight even more. However, Kylie appears and slams a punch into his head against the ground. The MC is surprised and asks if it is really Professor Kylie. She warns that Neil went too far and even calls him a muscle-brained idiot. Derek is amazed at how much more beautiful she has become since the last time he saw her, and she tells him to stop getting excited as she wants to know what he would do if a student died on the very first day of class. He says he is not an idiot since he was only trying to reveal the student's potential through the fight. She hopes he is not really an idiot and in fact was ordered to protect Louis and therefore wants to know if he understands what that means. Having said that, she lets him know that the director ordered him to go straight to his office. Derek says he understands and realizes he is going to get a serious scolding. In any case, his surprise does not fade since he cannot even imagine how strong the freshmen are. Besides that, he tells Neil to hurry up and put on some clothes and assures that if he loses again, his credits will be taken. Neil does not like that at all, since he cannot withstand his master's attacks and at that pace will go bankrupt and will have to hunt monsters to earn money. The bell rings and the teacher says the class is over and the veterans can go home while the freshmen will rest by drinking a recovery potion. Cain says he is surprised since that academy has existed for 100 years and there have not been many times when a freshman defeated a veteran. Louis says that in the materials he saw, there was nothing written about that. Cain explains that that is exactly the point, since in history it has only happened 3 times, and in fact, several great masters emerged from freshmen who managed to defeat their veterans. The most recent was the year their parents enrolled and apparently defeated their veterans. Meanwhile, Marcus apologizes to Jess and believes they should teach the commoners a lesson in secret. He asks not to worry since there is no need to rush, as there will be many chances to seek revenge, and no matter how much of a genius he is still nothing more than a citizen of the Empire, and therefore they control the fate of that type of person. Fay asks Miliana what she thought of Louis' technique, since he apparently has incredible talent with the water element, and if she follows him, she may become even stronger. Miliana agrees, but does not know if she could keep up with him, since he used mysterious techniques that no one has ever used before, and she believes she needs to find more attack methods of the water attribute in order to advance. Fay tells her to stay calm since she is still 16 years old, and she says she will do her best for the sake of her own family. Fay, knowing she would say that, calls out to Louis and tells him that Miliana has something to say to him. The girl becomes extremely embarrassed, especially with the whole class asking if it is some kind of love confession or something like that. The MC asks if she needs something, and Fay asks if he could teach Miliana about the ice shield he used since it is the water attribute just like hers. He says he has no problem after all they're friends. She takes a deep breath and says that someday she might end up causing him trouble, but even so, she guarantees that he will not regret it. He says it will not be a problem and that he would never betray a friend. However, she becomes a bit embarrassed since she does not want to involve him in her problems, and because of that, she runs off without warning. Fay apologizes and goes after her friend to talk with her for a bit. The MC imagines that both of them have their own circumstances and considers that he himself might be the one causing problems for everyone. He asks his friend if he knows anything about Miliana. He replies that the girl is the only daughter of the Royce family and the granddaughter of a grandmaster. When her grandmother was alive, that family prospered. However, after her death, the family lost all the power it had, and that is as far as he knows the story. He turns to Kara and asks if he knows anything. The boy says that her family already had a problem with the association. The MC considers that apparently Miliana has problems with the Arcane Association and does not want to involve anyone else, but Kara shakes his head since he does not know if that is really the case. The MC becomes worried since he does not have much information and will have to ask Fay or Miliana herself for more details. After that, in the magical training field, the instructor explains about magic, the blessing of the goddess, and the essence of that world. In that class, he will teach how to deal with magic and how to use martial arts. Cain sees his colleague looking down and asks if something happened. He replies that he was excited for the class, but he feels that the teacher does not like him. Sid approaches and warns that it is forbidden to talk while the teacher is speaking and that he particularly hates having his class interrupted, and because of that, he says that both of them had 1 credit point deducted. Then he makes it clear that he is not just any idiot and that if they continue breaking the rules, they will eventually have their credits reduced to 0. He says this and deducts another point because the MC is a rebel who does not learn proper manners. This makes Lewis even more furious since he did nothing. Sid uses his magic and summons a giant armor that leaves everyone shocked by its size. He explains that to use martial arts in real combat, one must first master both magic and martial techniques. If one wants to become a proper apprentice, one must master them perfectly. Then he summons a magic sword and launches a slash against the statue because he wants to demonstrate his point. The power leaves everyone impressed, since it cut through the armor like butter. He explains that later all the students will attack the stone in the same way, and whoever causes the most damage will receive 5 credit points. He regenerates the statue and tells them to form groups according to their attributes, except for Neil, who will not need to form a group with anyone since he has a dual attribute. Everyone goes to their respective pairs according to their attributes, and some students make fun of the MC and Miliana for having the water attribute, which is considered the most pathetic of all. She laments this since water attribute mages are always forced to stay in support and never even get a chance to attack the statue, and at this rate Lewis will never become a great master. However, she says that for a certain person, she needs to prove that she has the necessary strength. The MC realizes that she is referring to someone important and asks what is wrong. She becomes embarrassed since she spoke too loudly and says it is nothing. He takes the opportunity to ask why she is so obsessed with attacking, since the water attribute has more support magic than the others, and interrupting the enemy and protecting allies is also an important role. Immediately she shouts that she wants to become a Grand Master to restore her family's power, and for that she needs to be capable of attacking and defending. After all, God would not create an incomplete attribute, and the water attribute must have powerful attack magic. That is everything she believes in, and she even improved her water blade with magical potions, but in the end the attack power is insufficient. At this moment, a student approaches and says it is almost his turn and therefore wants to warm up with her water shield. She does not know how to respond and uses her shield for the boy to keep attacking. The MC observes that the water attribute of a grandmaster is the same as his past life, where people kept mocking him since he was incapable of doing anything and kept saying that he did not deserve any glory and that all he should do was give up. Louis realizes that she knows her own weakness but continues pursuing her dreams without giving up, and just like Cain, she can show a new path for the martial arts. Because of that, he decides to help, and beside her, uses his ice magic, which sends the student flying. Then he explains that he believes in the potential of the attribute, and therefore she can observe his technique. Miliana becomes extremely embarrassed, and the MC shouts to the teacher since he also wants to attack. Sid thinks this is absurd and warns that if he cannot cause any damage, all his credits will be confiscated, and he also wants to know how he will do that using ice magic. Lewis says that is not it, and that he will use another method where he will increase the attack power of the water attribute. Everyone starts mocking him since they are aware that the water attribute is a joke in attack. Miliana asks him to think carefully since the statue is a structure reinforced with earth magic, and a basic attack would not even cause a scratch. He tells her not to worry since he has an idea, and after positioning himself, reflects that in his world there is a saying that effort overcomes everything. Then he grabs the sand on the ground and decides to apply strong pressure with water and will force a shot with all his strength to turn it into a weapon that can cut anything. He moves forward and delivers countless attacks with his finger. The students ask if this is some kind of joke since such a weak attack would barely leave a scratch. But one of the girls, frightened, tells them to look closely. Even Sid is shocked, thinking it is impossible since the attacks sliced the statue into pieces, and the MC, proud, says that is the power of the water attribute. After nightfall, the group goes out for a walk, and Cain tells how Professor Sid's face looked after being forced to give the 5 credit points to Lewis, since the move he made was brilliant to the point of impressing everyone. The MC says that at that moment he was focused on water magic, so he didn't see the expression the professor made. Cain takes the opportunity to mention that Fay went to help Miliana and that they even bought several recovery potions. And during their free time, they are using the training room for special training. Kara says that the fee for this training room is 30 gold coins, and adding the recovery potions, it totals 300 gold coins. The MC is surprised at how expensive it is and takes the opportunity to say that he has a favor to ask Kara, since it involves the training mission they will have in a few days. After that, with the whole class gathered, the professor says he is satisfied since everyone is growing very quickly, and that from that moment on they will participate in academy training missions. This is because the Academy of Candria is connected to the Great Forest of Mondo, and is a place originally dominated by monsters, but currently serves as a border between several nations. However, monsters still live there, and the closer they get to the center, the stronger the monsters will be. The Academy was built to protect that side of the empire from the monsters of the forest, and that is why students are eventually assigned to defeat them from time to time. The magic crystals obtained from monsters during the mission can be exchanged for credits or rewards, and the student with the highest gains will receive extra rewards. However, if someone acts recklessly, such as challenging a stronger enemy, he will end up being rescued by a professor and will lose 1 point. Neil gets excited since now he will finally be able to give it his all hunting monsters. Faye asks the MC if he is planning to train Miliana through real combat. He says yes, since people only show their true ability in front of real enemies, and asks to form a team of the 5 of them since they will be able to work well together and grow efficiently. The group likes how it will be, and Derek warns that they will do their first training mission together with the veterans and that it is a good opportunity to learn many things. Jess tells the MC that they have finally met again and warns that those missions are always dangerous and that he should make sure not to die. The MC assures that it will not be a problem after all, people only grow by overcoming danger. The veteran thinks this is pathetic and tells his friends not to interfere if the boys are in danger. Cain says that the veterans will not try to do anything directly since the professor will be watching during the mission, but they may try to make them fight stronger monsters. Lewis says that this is perfect since stronger monsters give more valuable crystals. All the students enter the forest, and Cain says that the saints of that era exterminated all the monsters in the center and only a few remained on the edges. A veteran says that normally several fighters are needed to defeat a high-level monster and that they should not underestimate the enemy. As soon as he says that, a giant wolf of the fighter class appears before them, and immediately the boy jumps to the top of a tree, thinking that that level of monster is perfect for their training. He is aware that that monster is quite strong for that area and has very high resistance, so some freshmen will definitely have a lot of difficulty. Everyone prepares themselves, as does the wolf, which lets out a loud roar, starting the battle. Faye advances with her fire spear but is repelled by the monster. Next, Cain also attacks from above and manages to hit the monster's back, but realizes it was completely useless against that high resistance. The bear slams the ground, throwing everyone away, but is bombarded in the face by a huge explosion. The MC thinks Kara's attack is cool, but it only made the monster even more furious. Miliana decides to join in and uses her water ability, trapping the huge bear in her water chains. She warns that it's not over yet and throws the monster as if it were nothing, sending it flying and flipping through the air into the distance. Louis is surprised and asks what technique that was. Faye replies that it is a magic combining water and jujutsu and that it is Miliana's original technique. He finds this idea of an original technique interesting and starts running to where the bear would fall. Then he delivers a kick that sends the monster flying into the sky. Next, he forms a ball of power, aims upward, and launches it with full force at the monster, which upon being hit takes absurd damage enough to be finished off by that blow. Miliana cannot believe such high damage using only the water attribute. He explains that it was water vapor, a vapor produced when a compressed fireball at a high temperature explodes and can burn any enemy. She finds this incredible and wonders if she could do it as well. He throws some rings to her and explains that he asked Kara to order them, since with them she will also be able to use earth, fire, and wind magic. She becomes happy with this help until suddenly a fire shot comes toward her out of nowhere. She is startled when she sees the power coming her way, and it passes beside her body, sweeping away a large part of the forest. Still in shock, she notices the destruction the attack caused and says it is unbelievable. Even the veteran is trembling since the firepower was capable of completely annihilating a high-level bear. The MC shouts that something is wrong and that it is approaching as the forest begins to tremble, and the veteran panics when he sees that they are BlazeKong. Cain says the situation has gotten much worse, and Lewis asks what kind of monster a BlazeKong is. He explains that it is a monster that should not be anywhere near the academy, and for them to appear in a group is unbelievable. They become worried since other groups might be in danger, and indeed the veterans are desperate, not understanding why that level of monster appeared in that place, and Professor Sid is trying to understand what the hell is happening. Meanwhile, Neil stands before one and gets excited since the fight will be interesting. Professor Sid issues a warning for everyone to run. The MC is aware that if the monsters should not be appearing in that place, then something is happening. A Kong appears beside the veteran, who immediately activates his sun armor upon seeing it, but is crushed anyway with a single punch, ending up almost unconscious on the ground. The monster prepares to deliver the final attack, but the MC appears with a flying ice kick that is strong enough to send it flying away. He shouts for Kara and Miliana to take the veteran to a safe place, and the rest prepare for battle. The BlazeKong charges its attack once again and leaves all the students desperate as they are forced to dodge or they will die. This is because the fire spit is strong enough to destroy everything in its path. They know they need to work as a team if they want to win and activate their wind speed to get closer, and with 2 daggers in hand, they manage to land an attack that is enough to damage the monster's arm. Fay takes advantage of this opportunity and also attacks with her flaming spear, slamming the monster into the ground with tremendous force. Cain feels more confident as they're managing to win. The girl does not stop there and continues attacking nonstop. At that moment, she sees the magical crystal on the monster's body and knows exactly where she must attack. With that, she points her spear and fires one of her strongest abilities, and it is possible to see the attack even from kilometers away, thus managing to destroy the crystal. She warns that now it is one less monster, but because she gets distracted, she does not see that the BlazeKong did not die and even uses its fire breath at maximum power in her direction. Luckily, the MC arrives in time, blocking the attack with his ice shield. Then he uses his ability on the ground and manages to freeze the monster completely. She thanks him for the help since she had not seen that the monkey was still alive. At that moment, the ice begins to crack and he jumps onto her body, telling her to be careful. This is because the gorilla managed to free itself from that prison and even had its body regenerated. Cain panics since he already knew they were violent but had never heard that they could regenerate so quickly. The MC finds this sensation strange, since it is exactly how he felt with Neil back then. The fire-haired one is unable to control himself due to so much excitement, defeating all the monsters in front of him. Meanwhile, the professor notices that even after killing one monster, several others appear and becomes worried, since at that rate the students may die. The MC finds himself cornered, as more gorillas keep appearing all the time. Elsewhere, Kara and Miliana are lying on the ground along with the veteran. He opens his eyes and laughing says that his preparation is complete and that he will be able to use the defective monsters to finish off the MC. Activating his ability, he makes the BlazeKongs enter a state of fury, becoming even more powerful after releasing their powers. They cannot believe what they are seeing as the monsters are using arcane armor. The gorilla strikes the ground and everyone is forced to retreat, but he notices that the monsters in particular are focusing on him. One of them summons a fireball that becomes more than twice its size. The MC is shocked since all the monsters summon this power at the same time to attack him. His group panics, but the monsters attack anyway, creating a colossal wave of destruction. Brian watches from afar and says that the operation was successful. The professor does not like this at all, since the wave of power was enormous. Neil is also surprised to see this, but a beam of blue light appears in the middle of the explosion, and this draws the attention of the fire gorillas, as a huge blue vortex appears, and the MC emerges completely protected by his ability, completely furious with the situation. Faye says she is impressed, since he is controlling magic over a wide area with mental power, and only someone above master level could do that. The MC knows he had to accelerate the circulation of magical power, so he temporarily reached the level of a master. Since he cannot avoid the situation, he uses his ice-breathing technique, which creates a large-scale attack that engulfs all the surrounding gorillas to trap them. Then he prepares himself and rushes forward, delivering a powerful punch to one of the monsters, piercing it from the inside out with several ice spikes. After landing that attack, a gorilla appears behind him, but he stomps the ground and dodges at high speed, which not only allows him to evade, but also creates several ice spikes that trap the monster's arm. The MC keeps advancing, dodging the attacks of all the gorillas and leaving them confused as they cannot see where the target is. He maintains this speed until forming his 8 trigrams ability, which creates ice in their direction. Then he jumps and uses his flowing palm, which fills the magic circle with even more ice, reaching the point of leaving all the monsters completely frozen. They even become enraged trying to break free, but are shattered the moment the ice breaks. Brian can't believe what he is seeing. Meanwhile, Cain and Fay found it incredible since he defeated several fire gorillas in an instant. The MC thinks about what he just did since for some reason wind and water magic were easier to control. Cain runs up to him saying he didn't expect the ice technique to be so powerful. However, Fay tells them to stop talking since if they get attacked again it won't be funny. The MC tells them to relax, saying everything will be fine because the teachers have just arrived to help. Brian gets irritated because reinforcements arrived and punches his own chest since he failed completely. However, he assures that next time they won't be so lucky. At that moment, a whirlwind appears and the director shows up, ordering the teachers to defeat the monsters and rescue the students. Then he asks if everyone is safe. Fay says that the MC defeated several master-level Blaze Kongs alone, and that if he hadn't been there, she has no idea what could have happened. Aronian becomes intrigued by this, but Louis changes the subject, saying that the recent incident was unusual, and asks them to look at the monsters that were shattered by ice. The director realizes what it is, and tells everyone to return to the academy, since he will take care of the rest. After returning, the MC goes to the shop, and the attendant asks why he is buying so many mental recovery potions with the credits he earned, since taking too many can have a reverse effect on the body. He says he knows and will use them carefully. At that moment, Kylie appears asking to talk to him and says that the director examined the Blaze Kong corpses using alchemy and found traces of magical drugs and artificial modification, and his guess was correct. The MC concludes that the incident was caused intentionally, and she explains that she still doesn't know who the enemy is and that with the Majesty and the Emperor aging, some people have become impatient. The Emperor has not yet decided on a successor, and if they want to eliminate other candidates, it is only logical that they will control the children of their supporters. With a great force in the north, the Academy's actions will be extremely important. Louis thinks about this succession struggle, but soon changes his mind, since he is absolutely certain that the target was definitely himself. She says she will continue investigating and will help in every way she can, and says goodbye, asking him to become stronger to meet the director's expectations. He thinks about becoming stronger, opens a potion, and drinks it immediately. Then he meets with his friends and says he cannot afford to waste time. After that, Brian goes to his father and says that regarding the modified monsters, an increase in combat capability was confirmed. However, the results were below expectations. That is because most of the corpses were discarded due to heavy destruction. His father continues listening in silence, and the boy, worried, says that some corpses were recovered by the Academy and worries in case the director notices. He replies that the tests were prepared by the Bhutan Empire, and even if they notice, they won't be able to do anything. After all, the most important matter concerns the cursed child. Brian says he had suspected it for some time since the MC was emitting a terrifying aura and believes that the director is hiding his identity. His father finds this interesting and asks if he has been avoiding insects. Brian says there isn't much he can do, but his father says that the cursed child is not something to be feared and that he should send the information to the association's superiors. After all, they will use the power of the goddess to eliminate the cursed child since it is part of her duty. Vaughn, who is a prince and leader of the noble faction, finishes by saying that one must learn to deal with problematic matters without getting their own hands dirty.
That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.